The stranger's proposal arrived between the champagne toast and the dessert course, and Helena Orlov said no without hesitation. She had come to the spring gala for Children's Hospital precisely because she thought it would be safe, anonymous, the kind of event where a gallery assistant could blend into the background and watch other people spend extravagant amounts of money on good causes. The auction hall glittered with chandeliers and silk gowns, and Helena wore her only formal dress, a simple black thing that had seen 3 seasons and would probably see 3 more. She was nursing her second glass of champagne when he appeared at her elbow, tall and otherworldly, with hair so pale it seemed to drink the light and skin like carved marble. "Forgive the intrusion," he said, voice low and careful, every syllable precisely placed. "My name is Draeven Jokela. I wonder if you might consider a proposal." Helena turned, eyebrows raised, expecting a request for a dance or perhaps a donation pitch. Instead, she found herself looking into eyes the color of storm clouds, ancient and patient, set in a face too beautiful to be entirely human. Everything about him whispered wealth, from the perfect cut of his midnight suit to the antique silver ring on his right hand, but it was more than that. He carried himself like a man accustomed to absolute certainty. "A proposal," she repeated, amused despite herself. "Marriage," Draven said simply. "I would like you to be my wife." The champagne glass nearly slipped from her fingers. For a moment, Helena thought she had misheard, that the orchestra music and the crowd chatter had somehow scrambled his words into nonsense. But he stood there watching her with that impossible calm, waiting. "You're joking," she said. "I am not. You don't even know me. I know enough." His gaze never wavered, intent and somehow gentle at the same time. "I have been watching you this evening, the way you listen when others speak, the way you bid on the children's art despite having far less than those around you, the way you exist in this room without pretense or performance. I know that I want no one else." Helena felt heat creeping up her neck, a flush of embarrassment and irritation. This was either an elaborate joke or the stranger was genuinely unhinged, and either way she wanted no part of it. Around them the gala continued, oblivious, a river of wealth and privilege flowing past their small, strange island. "I'm going to save us both some time," she said firmly. "The answer is no. Absolutely not. I don't know what kind of game this is, but I'm not interested." Something flickered in those storm-gray eyes, there and gone too quickly to name. Pain, perhaps, or simply acknowledgement. Draven inclined his head in a gesture that somehow seemed courtly, old-fashioned, a relic from another age. "Then I apologize for disturbing your evening," he said quietly. "I had hoped, but hope is not entitlement. I wish you every happiness, Helena Orlov." He turned and walked away before she could ask how he knew her full name, disappearing into the crowd with the unsettling grace of smoke dispersing. Helena stood frozen, heart hammering, the champagne gone warm and flat in her hand. She looked around to see if anyone had witnessed the bizarre exchange, but the other guests were absorbed in their own conversations, their own small dramas. She tried to dismiss it. Over the next few days, working in the cool quiet of the gallery, where she catalogued paintings and soothed anxious buyers, Helena told herself it had been nothing. A rich eccentric with more money than sense, a man who made impulsive decisions and moved on just as quickly. She almost succeeded in forgetting. Then Lydia came to visit. Lydia Chen had been Helena's closest friend since college, a whirlwind of energy and curiosity who now worked as a researcher for a documentary production company. She arrived at the gallery on a gray Tuesday afternoon with coffee and pastries and a manic gleam in her eye that Helena had learned to recognize as the onset of a new obsession. "You will not believe what I've been digging into," Lydia said, spreading her laptop open on the break room table. "Actual vampires. In the city. And not like goth kids who think they're vampires. The real thing." Helena bit into a croissant, willing herself to patience. "Lydia, I know how it sounds, but look at this." Lydia pulled up a folder of photographs, images captured in low light, often blurred. Pale figures in expensive clothes entering buildings through underground passages. A woman with white hair and burgundy eyes caught mid-stride on a security camera. Documents that looked old enough to crumble, written in languages Helena didn't recognize. There's a whole society. They've been here for centuries, hiding in plain sight. There are rules, territories, a whole political structure. This is for a documentary? Helena asked carefully. Maybe, if I can verify any of it. But that's not the wildest part. Lydia's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up a new image. There's supposedly a king, the Vampire King, ruler of the Eastern Territories, which includes our entire city and about 1,500 miles in every direction. Nobody knows what he looks like because he almost never appears in public. But I found someone who claimed to have seen him at a charity event last week, and they described him, and Helena. She turned the laptop screen. It showed a grainy photograph, clearly taken from a distance and zoomed in until the pixels fractured. But Helena could still make out the figure in the midnight suit, the fall of colorless hair, the aristocratic bearing. Her croissant turned to dust in her mouth. "That's him," Lydia said triumphantly. "That's supposedly Draeven Jokela, Vampire King of the Eastern Territories. Looks like something out of a fairy tale, doesn't he? All pale and gorgeous and probably absolutely deadly. The source said he spent the whole gala watching someone, totally fixated, but wouldn't say who." Helena's hands had gone numb. The break room suddenly felt too small, airless, the walls pressing in. She saw again those storm-gray eyes, that preternatural calm. Heard his voice saying marriage, saying I know that I want no one else, saying hope is not entitlement. "Helena, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I need to go," Helena heard herself say. She stood too quickly, chair scraping. "I'm sorry, I just remembered something. I have to go right now." She didn't wait for Lydia's response. She grabbed her coat and her bag and fled the gallery, heart racing, thoughts spiraling. A vampire, the Vampire King. He had asked her to marry him, and she had laughed in his face, and he had simply accepted her refusal and walked away. He could have compelled her. Lydia's research had mentioned that, the ability to bend human will with nothing but a glance and a word. He could have taken anything he wanted. He had chosen not to. Helena ran. She didn't know where she was going at first, operating on pure instinct, but her feet carried her back toward the hotel where the gala had been held. She had to find him, had to know if it was real, if any of this was real. The spring afternoon was fading into evening, shadows pooling in doorways and alleys, and she felt suddenly aware of how much she didn't know about the world. How many hidden things moved through the spaces between heartbeats. The hotel loomed before her, all glass and steel and glowing lights. Helena pushed through the revolving door into the lobby, then stopped, lost. She had no idea how to find a Vampire King. She couldn't exactly ask the concierge. "Miss Orlov." The voice came from behind her, smooth and familiar. Helena spun to find a woman standing near the elevator bank, tall and elegant in a gray suit, with white hair falling in a sleek curtain to her shoulders and eyes like garnets. Not Draven, but clearly the same kind of being, the same porcelain perfection. "My name is Serafina," the woman said. "I serve King Draven. He did not expect to see you again." "I need to talk to him," Helena said, breathless. "Please, I made a mistake. I didn't understand." Serafina studied her with an expression that was not unkind but utterly unreadable. Understanding and fear are different things. His Majesty does not wish to be sought out of fear. "It's not fear," Helena insisted, though her pulse was hammering and some primitive part of her brain was screaming at her to run from this predatory, impossible creature. I don't know what it is, but I need to see him. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." A long silence. Then Serafina inclined her head in that same archaic gesture Draven had used. "Follow me." They took the elevator down, not up to the penthouses where Helena had expected, but down, below the lobby, below the parking garage, into depths she hadn't known existed. The elevator descended for what felt like minutes, and when the doors finally opened, it was onto a corridor of polished black stone, lit by lanterns that burned without heat. Helena followed Serafina through a maze of passages, past chambers filled with people, pale-skinned and beautiful and terribly other, who turned to watch them pass with bright, curious eyes. "This is the Court of Night," Serafina said, "one of 17 such courts in the Eastern Territories. This is where His Majesty conducts the business of our people when he is in the city." The passage opened into a grand hall that took Helena's breath away. It was built in the old style, all soaring arches and intricate stonework, but maintained with meticulous modern care. Tapestries hung on the walls depicting battles and ceremonies, and at the far end of the hall stood a dais with a single throne carved from what looked like black glass. Draven sat upon it, listening to a vampire in formal robes who was speaking in rapid, agitated tones. He saw her immediately. The speaking vampire fell silent, following his king's gaze, and the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Draven rose in one fluid motion and descended from the dais. He moved like water, like wind, and Helena understood with sudden visceral clarity that this being could kill her without effort, without thought, that his restraint was the only thing that had ever stood between her and oblivion. He stopped 3 paces away, maintaining careful distance, and she saw now what she had missed at the gala, the weight he carried, the bone-deep weariness hidden beneath the regal bearing. He was beautiful, yes, and powerful, but he was also unutterably alone. "You came back," he said softly. "I didn't know," Helena said. "I didn't know who you were, what you were. If you had known, would your answer have been different?" Draven asked. "That is precisely what I fear." The hall was still silent, every vampire present listening with inhuman intensity. Helena felt their attention like a physical weight, but she kept her eyes on Draven's face. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't know what my answer would have been. But I know that you asked me to marry you, and I said no, and you just accepted it. You walked away. You could have made me say yes. Lydia, my friend, she's been researching your kind, and she said vampires can compel humans. You could have done that, but you didn't." "Compulsion is not love," Draven said simply. "I have no interest in a wife who comes to me in chains, even if those chains are invisible." "Why me?" The question burst out of her, raw and bewildered. "You're a king. You could have anyone. Why would you want to marry someone who didn't even know you existed until a week ago?" For the first time since she had met him, Draven smiled. It was a small thing, barely a curve of his mouth, but it transformed his face into something warmer, more human. "I am 843 years old," he said. "In all that time, I have never seen anyone look at the world the way you do, as if it still holds wonder, as if kindness still matters. You exist without armor, Helena Orlov, and that is the rarest thing I have ever encountered." Helena's throat tightened. She was aware that she was standing in an underground vampire court surrounded by immortal beings, that she should be terrified, that this was all impossible. But all she could focus on was the quiet sincerity in Draven's voice, the way he looked at her as if she were something precious. "I don't know anything about your world," she said. "I don't know how any of this works. But I came back because I had to, because walking away from you felt wrong, and I don't understand why yet. But I want to. I want to try." Something eased in Draven's expression, a tension she hadn't realized he was carrying. But he didn't move closer, didn't reach for her. "Trying is not the same as promising," he said carefully, "and I am told I move too quickly when I find something I want, so perhaps we should begin differently. Not with a proposal, but with an introduction, a proper one this time." He extended his hand, palm up, the gesture courteous and old-fashioned. Helena stepped forward and placed her hand in his. His skin was cool, smooth as marble, and she felt the restrained strength in his fingers as they closed gently around hers. "I am Draeven Jokela," he said formally. "King of the Eastern Territories, Lord of 17 courts, born in the winter of the year 1182. I am asking for the honor of your time and attention so that I might show you who I am and you might decide what, if anything, you wish me to be to you." Helena felt a wild urge to laugh at the sheer strangeness of it all, but it came out as something softer, warmer. "I'm Helena Orlov. I'm 26. I work in an art gallery. I have a studio apartment and $3,000 in student debt. I'm extremely ordinary." "You are not," Draven said quietly. But I would like the chance to prove that to you. Okay, Helena said, and felt the word reshape reality around her. Okay, yes, let's try. The watching vampires exhaled as one, and Helena realized they had been worried, genuinely worried about their king's happiness. Serafina stepped forward, her severe expression softening almost imperceptibly. If I may, Your Majesty, she said, perhaps we should retire to somewhere more private. The court does not need to witness every moment of courtship. Draven looked vaguely embarrassed, which Helena would not have thought possible for a vampire king. Yes, of course. Helena, would you join me for dinner? There is much to explain, and I suspect you have many questions. So many questions, Helena agreed. He led her through the grand hall to a smaller chamber off to one side, this one furnished in comfortable modern style with deep sofas and soft lighting. A table had been laid with covered dishes, and Helena realized with a start that the food was human food, prepared and waiting. You expected me, she said. I hoped, Draven corrected. Serafina suggested I might wish to be prepared should you arrive. She is often wiser than I am. They sat, and servants, human ones this time, appeared to pour wine and uncover the dishes. Helena recognized the meal as something from an expensive restaurant she had never been able to afford. When they were alone again, she looked across the table at Draven and tried to organize the chaos of her thoughts into coherent questions. Do you eat? She asked finally. Real food, I mean. We can, Draven said. It provides no nourishment, but the taste remains pleasant. I will not lie to you, Helena. We require blood to survive, but we do not kill, not anymore. We have arrangements with blood banks, with willing donors. The old ways were brutal and unsustainable. We have learned to be civilized. Helena poked at her food, appetite suddenly uncertain. And sunlight? Crosses? Garlic? Sunlight is painful but not fatal for those of us who are old and strong, though I would not choose to spend a summer afternoon at the beach. Crosses and garlic are human superstition. We can be killed by destroying the heart or severing the head, and we heal slowly from silver, but otherwise we are remarkably resilient. He paused. I tell you this not to frighten you, but because I will not build anything between us on lies or omission. You deserve to know what I am. What you are is terrifying, Helena said honestly. You know that, right? This whole thing is terrifying. I'm sitting underground having dinner with a vampire king, and a week ago my biggest concern was whether I could afford to get my winter coat dry cleaned. I know, Draven said softly. I am sorry for that. I am sorry that I have pulled you into a world you did not ask for. If you wish to leave, now or at any point, you are free to go. I will not stop you. I will ensure that you are safe and that our people do not trouble you. You have my word as king. Helena believed him. That was the strange part. She had known this man, this being, for a cumulative total of perhaps 20 minutes, and yet she believed him absolutely. There was something in the quiet intensity of his manner that spoke of unbreakable integrity. I don't want to leave, she said slowly. Not yet. I want to understand. You said you've been watching me. For how long? Draven had the grace to look uncomfortable. 3 months. You began working at the Ashford Gallery in January. I was there for an exhibition, and I saw you explaining a painting to a child who had wandered away from his parents. You were so patient with him, so genuinely enthusiastic. I found myself returning to the gallery, hoping to see you again, hoping to understand what it was about you that had caught my attention so completely. That's a little creepy, Helena said, but without heat. Yes, Draven agreed simply. I am aware. In my defense, I am very old and very foolish when it comes to matters of the heart. I have had lovers over the centuries, but never anything that felt like this. Never this certainty. I saw you and I knew with an inevitability that terrified me that I wanted to spend the rest of my existence in your presence. So I made a plan, clumsy and arrogant as it was. I would approach you at the gala. I would ask clearly for what I wanted, and I would accept whatever answer you gave, because you deserved that choice. Helena set down her fork. no longer even pretending to eat. You fell in love with me before we ever spoke. Yes, that's insane. Yes, Draven said again, and this time there was a hint of wry humor in his voice. I have been told as much by several members of my court. Serafina in particular had many thoughts on the subject. Despite everything, Helena found herself smiling. I like her. She's scary, but I like her. She will be pleased to hear it. She worries about me. They talked through dinner, or rather Helena asked questions, and Draven answered them with careful honesty. He told her about the vampire society, the ancient laws that governed their kind, the delicate balance they maintained with the human world. He explained that most humans who learned of their existence were either turned, bonded to a vampire family, or had their memories gently altered to remove the knowledge. But that he would not do that to her, not without her explicit permission, even if she chose to walk away. He told her about his responsibilities as king, the endless negotiations and political maneuvering, the weight of making decisions that affected thousands of lives, both human and vampire. He spoke of the loneliness of his position, the way power isolated even as it elevated. And slowly, carefully, Helena began to see him not as a terrifying immortal predator, but as a person who carried unimaginable burdens with quiet grace, a person who had chosen kindness when he could have chosen cruelty. "Can I see you again?" she asked, when the evening drew to a close, when Serafina appeared to murmur that the king had morning obligations to attend to. "Tomorrow, maybe? Or whenever you're free." Draven's expression softened into something that might have been joy. "I would like that very much. Shall I call on you at the gallery?" "Maybe somewhere more private," Helena said. "I have a feeling Lydia is going to have a lot of questions when I see her next, and I'd like to figure out my own answers first. Then I will send a car for you tomorrow evening. We can walk in the night garden. It is one of my favorite places." Serafina escorted her back through the maze of corridors to the elevator and then up into the ordinary world of hotel lobbies and city streets. Helena stepped out into the cool spring night, feeling untethered from reality, as if she might float away at any moment. She had rejected a vampire king's proposal. Now she was courting him, or he was courting her, or they were courting each other. And the strangest part was that it felt right. Terrifying and impossible, and absolutely right. Over the next 2 weeks, Helena fell into a rhythm that would have seemed absurd to her former self. She worked her normal shifts at the gallery, cataloging art and helping customers, and in the evening she entered Draven's world. Sometimes he sent a car to bring her to the court of night, where they would walk through the underground gardens he had mentioned, vast caverns transformed into spaces of beauty with imported earth and carefully tended night-blooming flowers. Other times he came to her, appearing at her apartment as the sun set, and they would talk for hours on her small balcony or walk through the city streets together. He was unfailingly courteous, careful never to push for more than she was willing to give. Their physical contact was limited to the occasional touch of hands, the brush of shoulders as they walked side by side. But Helena felt the restraint in him, the want held in check by absolute control. It should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel safe, cherished, as if her comfort mattered more to him than his own desires. She learned his mannerisms, the way he went very still when he was thinking, the faint smile that appeared when something pleased him. She learned that he loved music, particularly the pieces from his mortal youth, complex medieval harmonies that sounded alien to her modern ears. She learned that he read voraciously in a dozen languages, that he had a dry, subtle humor that emerged when he felt comfortable, that he carried the weight of centuries but had somehow retained a capacity for wonder. And she learned that she was falling in love with him. It crept up on her gradually, then all at once. One evening she was sitting with him in the night garden, listening to him explain the politics of the Western vampire territories, and she realized she was happy, genuinely, completely happy, in a way she had not been in years. The realization struck her like lightning, leaving her breathless. Draven noticed immediately. "Helena, what is it? You look startled." "I'm in love with you," she blurted out, then immediately clapped a hand over her mouth. "Sorry, I didn't mean to, that just came out." Draven went absolutely motionless, predator still. and for a heartbeat Helena wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Then he moved, closing the distance between them in a single fluid step, and took her face gently in his cool hands. "Say it again," he said, voice rough with emotion. "Please." "I'm in love with you," Helena repeated, steadier this time. "I know it's fast. I know it's probably a terrible idea given that you're immortal and I'm incredibly mortal, and I don't understand half of what your life involves, but I can't help it. I love you, Draven." He kissed her then, the first real kiss they had shared, and it was soft and careful and absolutely devastating. His lips were cool against hers, gentle despite the inhuman strength she knew he possessed. Helena leaned into him, hands fisting in his shirt, and felt him shudder at the contact. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Draven rested his forehead against hers. "I have loved you since the moment I saw you," he said quietly. "I will love you until the stars go cold. But Helena, there are things we must discuss. Difficult things. Your mortality is not an insurmountable obstacle if you do not wish it to be, but the choice must be yours and yours alone. I will not pressure you. I will not steal your humanity from you. Whatever time you wish to give me, mortal or immortal, I will treasure it." "You mean turning," Helena said. "Becoming a vampire." "Yes, it is possible. It is not easy, and it is not without risk, but it is possible. And if you chose it, we would have eternity together." His hands were still cradling her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones with infinite tenderness. "But I need you to understand that I do not love you because I want to make you immortal. I love you because you are exactly who you are. If you choose to remain human, to grow old and eventually leave me, I will love every moment we have. The choice is yours." Helena felt tears prickling her eyes. "Can I think about it? I'm not saying no, but it's a big decision." "Take all the time you need," Draven said. "We have time. I am not going anywhere." But they didn't have as much time as they thought. The trouble began with a visit from a vampire Helena had not met before, a tall, elegant woman with white hair coiled in elaborate braids and eyes like winter ice. Her name was Cassia Devereux, and she appeared at the court of night 3 weeks after Helena had confessed her love, sweeping in with an entourage of lesser vampires and an air of absolute entitlement. Helena was sitting with Draven in his private chambers, reading aloud from a novel he had expressed interest in, when Seraphina entered looking troubled. "Your Majesty," she said carefully, "Lady Cassia Devereux has arrived and requests an audience. She has brought her daughter, Isolde." Something flickered across Draven's face, there and gone too quickly for Helena to interpret. "I see. Very well. Please show them to the receiving room. I will attend shortly." When Seraphina had left, Helena set the book aside. "Who is Lady Cassia?" "A complication," Draven said flatly. "She is the head of the Devereux family, one of the oldest and most powerful vampire lineages in the Eastern Territories. For the past century, she has been attempting to arrange a marriage between me and her daughter Isolde. I have refused repeatedly. I had hoped she would eventually accept my disinterest. But she hasn't. Evidently not." Draven sighed, a very human gesture of frustration. "I apologize. This will likely be unpleasant. You are welcome to remain here if you prefer not to be subjected to court politics." Helena stood, smoothing down her dress. "I'm coming with you. If she's going to be unpleasant, I want to see it firsthand." Draven looked at her for a long moment, then offered his arm. "As you wish. But stay close to me. Cassia can be subtle in her cruelty." They walked together through the corridors to the receiving room, a formal space furnished with antique chairs and heavy tapestries. Cassia Devereux stood in the center of the room like a queen in her own right, and beside her was a younger vampire who could only be Isolde. She had her mother's coloring, all ice and snow, and a face that would have launched ships in any era. She was breathtaking. Helena, in her gallery-appropriate slacks and simple blouse, felt suddenly and acutely ordinary. "Your Majesty," Cassia said, executing a curtsy that managed to seem both respectful and faintly mocking. "How generous of you to see us on such short notice." "Lady Cassia," Draven replied, tone utterly neutral, "to what do I owe the pleasure of this visit? I have heard the most extraordinary rumors. Cassia said, her gaze sliding past Draven to fix on Helena with cold assessment. Rumors that you have been keeping company with a human. I confess I could scarcely believe it. But here she is, I see. How charming. Helena is my guest and under my protection, Draven said, voice gone quiet and dangerous. You will address her with respect. Of course, Your Majesty. Cassia's smile was thin and sharp. I meant no disrespect. I am merely surprised. It is unusual for a king to consort so openly with a mortal, particularly when there are so many suitable matches among our own kind. My daughter Isolde, for instance. She has admired you for decades, and the alliance between our families would strengthen your position considerably. Isolde said nothing, but her ice-pale eyes were fixed on Draven with naked longing. Helena felt a spike of something hot and possessive in her chest, and had to consciously relax her clenched jaw. I have no need to strengthen my position, Draven said, and I have no interest in a political marriage. I have made this clear on multiple occasions, Lady Cassia. My personal affairs are not a matter for negotiation. But surely you must think of the succession, Cassia pressed. You are our king. You have responsibilities to your people, to the future of the Eastern Territories. A human cannot give you heirs. A human cannot stand beside you as an equal. She is a passing fancy, Your Majesty, and I say this with the greatest respect. She will age and die in the span of a heartbeat, and you will be left alone. Why not choose a queen who can share eternity with you? Helena felt each word land like a blow, because Cassia was not wrong. She was mortal. She would age and die while Draven remained unchanged. Unless she chose to turn, and even then, was she really a suitable queen for a vampire king? She had no political connections, no power, no wealth. She was just Helena Orlov, gallery assistant, who still had student debt and wore 3 season-old dresses. That is enough, Draven said, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. You overstep, Lady Cassia. I will choose my own queen, or I will choose no queen at all. Your daughter is doubtless admirable, but I do not love her, and I will not marry without love. This conversation is concluded. Cassia's expression hardened. You make a mistake, Your Majesty. The court whispers. There are those who believe you have gone soft, allowing a human to dictate your heart. There are those who would see such weakness as an opportunity. Then let them try, Draven said coldly, and let them learn why I am king. You are dismissed, Lady Cassia. Take your daughter and go. For a moment it seemed Cassia might argue further. Then she curtsied again, stiffly, and swept from the room with Isolde trailing in her wake. The door closed behind them with a definitive thud. Draven turned to Helena immediately. Ignore her. Every word was calculated to sow doubt. Cassia is a master manipulator, and she will stop at nothing to see her daughter on a throne. She wasn't entirely wrong, though, Helena said quietly. I am mortal. I can't give you heirs, at least not vampire ones, and I don't know anything about ruling or politics or any of this. Maybe I'm not the right choice for you. You are the only choice for me, Draven said fiercely. He took her hands in his, holding tight. The only one I want, the only one I will ever want. Do not let her poison this, Helena, please. But the seeds of doubt had been planted, and over the following days they grew. Helena found herself noticing all the ways she did not fit into Draven's world. The vampires of his court were unfailingly polite to her, but she saw the way they looked at her, the quiet confusion about why their king had chosen a human. She overheard whispered conversations that cut off abruptly when she entered a room. She felt the weight of expectation and judgment, and it pressed on her like a physical force. Draven noticed, of course. He tried to reassure her, spending every moment he could at her side, introducing her to court traditions and history, making it clear that she belonged. But Helena could see the strain it caused. He was king. He had responsibilities that required his attention, negotiations and judgments, and the endless work of governance. And every moment he spent reassuring her was a moment stolen from his duties. 3 days after Cassia's visit, Helena made a decision. She waited until evening when Draven came to her apartment as he did most nights now. He arrived with flowers, night-blooming jasmine from the underground gardens, and the smile he gave her was so full of uncomplicated joy that it nearly broke her resolve. "I love you," she said before she could lose her courage. "I need you to know that. Everything I'm about to say comes from love." Draven's smile faded. "Helena, I think we need to take a break," she said quickly before the words could strangle her. "Not forever. I need some time. Away from the court. Away from all of this. I need to figure out if I can really be what you need or if I'm just going to drag you down." "You could never drag me down," Draven said, voice rough. "Helena, please, do not do this. Do not let Cassia win." "It's not about her winning," Helena said, though her eyes were burning with tears. "It's about me knowing who I am and what I can handle. And right now, I don't know. I feel like I'm drowning, and I need to come up for air. Please try to understand." Draven was silent for a long moment, and Helena watched emotions flicker across his face almost too fast to track. Pain, frustration, understanding, and finally, terrible resignation. "If you need time, I will give it to you," he said quietly. "I will not cage you, Helena. Not ever. But know that I will be here, waiting, hoping, for as long as it takes." He set the jasmine down gently on her kitchen counter, and then he was gone, disappearing into the dusk with that inhuman speed. Helena stood alone in her apartment and felt the weight of his absence like a physical ache. The days that followed were gray and listless. Helena threw herself into work, taking extra shifts at the gallery, volunteering to handle the inventory in the dusty back rooms. Lydia tried to cheer her up with coffee dates and movie nights, but Helena could barely focus. She felt hollowed out, as if she had carved away something essential and was left with only the empty space. Lydia, to her credit, asked no questions. She had noticed Helena's distraction over the past weeks, the way she disappeared most evenings and came back looking dazed and happy. But she had respected Helena's privacy, waiting for her friend to share when she was ready. On the 5th day of the break, Helena was closing the gallery alone when Serafina appeared. Helena had not heard her enter, had not seen her cross the polished floor, but suddenly the vampire was simply there, standing between Helena and the door with an expression of careful neutrality. "Serafina," Helena said, heart leaping. "Is Draven all right? Did something happen?" "His Majesty is physically well," Serafina said. "Emotionally, he is suffering, but he is handling his duties as he always has, with grace and strength. I did not come here on his behalf. I came on my own, because there are things you should know." Helena set down the inventory clipboard she had been holding. "What things?" "Lady Cassia has been busy in your absence," Serafina said. "She has been speaking to members of the court, suggesting that the king's attachment to you is a sign of weakness, that his judgment has been compromised. She has been very careful not to make any overt moves against his rule, but she is laying groundwork, building alliances, preparing for something. For what? For a challenge, perhaps, or simply for ensuring that if you return, you will not be welcomed. She wants her daughter on the throne beside Draven, and she will not stop until she achieves that goal or is utterly defeated." Serafina's garnet eyes were hard. "I tell you this not to frighten you, but because you should understand what is at stake. The king's happiness, yes, but also the stability of the court. If Cassia succeeds in painting you as a liability, it could fracture the carefully maintained peace." Helena felt sick. "So I should stay away. That's what you're saying. I should leave him alone so Cassia can't use me against him." "No," Serafina said sharply. "I am saying that you should make a choice and commit to it. If you love him, truly love him, then come back and fight for him. Stand beside him and show the court that you are not some fragile human to be dismissed. Show them that the king's choice is sound. But if you are going to leave, do it cleanly. Do not draw this out and give Cassia ammunition. Draven deserves better than to be caught in this limbo." The words stung, but Helena recognized the truth in them. She had been wallowing in her own doubts and insecurities, too focused on her inadequacies to consider the larger picture. Draven was a king. His choices had consequences beyond just the two of them. I need to think, Helena said. But thank you for telling me, for caring about him enough to come here. Serafina inclined her head. I have served King Draven for 3 centuries. He is the finest leader our people have ever known, and he deserves happiness. I believe you could give him that, if you are brave enough to try. But bravery requires action, Miss Orlov, not retreat. She left as silently as she had arrived, and Helena stood alone in the dim gallery surrounded by paintings of other people's lives, other people's moments of beauty and triumph. She thought about Draven sitting on his black glass throne, handling the weight of governance while nursing a broken heart. She thought about Cassia maneuvering in the shadows, patient and ruthless. She thought about Isolde, beautiful and immortal and so very suitable. And then she thought about the way Draven had looked at her in the night garden when she confessed her love, the way his hands had cradled her face as if she were infinitely precious, the way he had kissed her with centuries of loneliness finally breaking open into hope. Helena pulled out her phone and called Lydia. I need your help, she said when her friend answered. And I need you to not ask questions until after, okay? Can you do that? Helena, you're scaring me a little, Lydia said. But yeah, okay. What do you need? I need to look like someone who could stand beside a king, Helena said. I need a dress and shoes, and I need to look absolutely perfect. Can you help me? There was a pause, and then Lydia's voice came back bright with excitement. Oh, this is about Mystery Man, isn't it? The one you've been sneaking off to see. Helena, are you going to tell me what's going on? After, Helena promised. If this works, I'll tell you everything, but right now I just need your help. Please. Consider me your fairy godmother, Lydia declared. I know exactly where we're going. The next evening, Helena stood outside the hotel that housed the entrance to the Court of Night, wearing a dress that had cost more than 2 months of her rent, even on sale. It was deep midnight blue, the color of the sky just before true darkness, and it fit her like it had been made for her. Lydia had done her makeup, dramatic and bold, and arranged her dark hair in an upswept style that made her neck look impossibly long. You look like a queen, Lydia had said, eyes shining. Whoever he is, he's going to lose his mind. Helena hoped so. She took the elevator down, down, down into the depths, and when the doors opened, Serafina was waiting. Miss Orlov, the vampire said, and for the first time Helena saw her smile. His Majesty is in the Grand Hall. There is a gathering tonight, various members of the court. Lady Cassia is in attendance. Perfect, Helena said, though her heart was hammering. I want her to see this. Serafina led her through the familiar corridors, but instead of taking her to Draven's private chambers, she brought her to the entrance of the Grand Hall. The great doors stood open, and inside Helena could see dozens of vampires gathered in their finery, talking in small groups beneath the soaring arched ceiling. And there, on the dais, sat Draven. He looked carved from moonlight and shadow, pale and regal, and unutterably alone. Cassia stood near the throne, speaking to him, and Isolde hovered at her mother's shoulder, looking hopeful. Draven's expression was polite, but distant, the face of a king performing his duties without joy. Helena took a breath and walked into the hall. The conversations died in ripples as she passed. Vampires turned to stare, taking in her dress, her bearing, the determination in her stride. She walked straight down the center of the hall, spine straight, chin high, and kept her eyes locked on Draven. He saw her and went absolutely still. Whatever Cassia was saying died mid-sentence as the king stood abruptly, descending from the dais in 3 long strides. They met in the center of the hall, in front of everyone, and Helena did not give herself time to doubt. I'm sorry, she said, voice clear enough to carry in the sudden silence. I'm sorry I ran. I was scared, and I let that fear make my decisions for me. But I'm done being scared, Draven. I love you. I want to be with you. And if that means becoming a vampire, if that's what it takes for us to have forever, then I'm ready. I choose you. I choose this life. I choose us. Draven's hands came up to frame her face, the gesture so familiar now, so achingly tender. You are certain. You understand what you are offering. Once you are turned, there is no going back. I'm certain, Helena said. I've never been more certain of anything. I want eternity with you. He kissed her then, in front of the assembled court, and Helena heard the collective intake of breath from the watching vampires. But she didn't care. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back with everything she had, pouring months of longing and days of loneliness and absolute certainty into the contact. When they finally broke apart, Draven rested his forehead against hers, and she could see the sheen of tears in his eyes. You honor me beyond measure, he said softly. My brave, impossible Helena, we will do this properly, we will make it beautiful, and then I will marry you, as I should have done from the very beginning, and you will be my queen in truth. Applause rippled through the hall, genuine and warm, and Helena turned to see the court watching with expressions ranging from delight to approval. Even Serafina was smiling, but Cassia looked furious, her ice-pale face rigid with barely suppressed rage. Isolde had gone very still, and there was something wounded in her expression that made Helena feel an unexpected pang of sympathy. Your Majesty, Cassia said, voice tight. Surely you do not mean to proceed with this. The girl knows nothing of our ways. She is untested. To make her your queen is my choice, Draven said, and his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Mine alone. You have made your objections clear, Lady Cassia, and they are noted and dismissed. I will hear no more arguments on this matter. Helena will be turned with all appropriate ceremony, and when she has adjusted to her new existence, we will be handfasted according to the old laws. Anyone who cannot accept this is welcome to leave my court. Cassia's jaw worked as if she was physically biting back words. Finally, she executed a stiff curtsy and turned on her heel, stalking from the hall with Isolde trailing behind her. Several other vampires looked uncertain, but none followed. When the great doors had closed behind Cassia, Draven turned back to Helena and took her hand, raising it to his lips. Come, he said. There is much to prepare, and I would have you know exactly what you are agreeing to before we proceed. I will hide nothing from you. You will go into this with full knowledge, and if at any point you wish to stop, you need only say so. Over the following days, Draven explained the turning process with clinical precision. It would not be easy. He would need to drain her nearly to death, and then she would drink his blood in turn. The transformation would take 3 days, during which she would be in excruciating pain as her body died and reformed into something new. There was a small risk, perhaps 5%, that her body would reject the change and she would simply die. I will be with you every moment, Draven promised. I will not leave your side, and when you wake, you will be vampire, immortal, powerful, and utterly changed. Your human life will be over, Helena. You will have to leave behind everyone who cannot know our secret. Your friend Lydia, your family, anyone who might notice that you no longer age. Is that a sacrifice you are willing to make? Helena thought of Lydia, bright and warm and curious, thought of her parents, who lived across the country and called every few weeks. It would hurt to leave them. But the alternative was living without Draven, and that was no longer imaginable. I'll find a way to say goodbye, she said. I'll make up a story, a job overseas maybe, something that explains why I can't visit. It will hurt them, but it's better than the alternative. You could tell your friend, Draven said carefully. Lydia, she has been researching our kind. She might understand. And she could be bonded to the court, protected under our laws. You would not have to lose her entirely. Helena considered that. Let me talk to her. After. When I've survived the turning and had time to adjust. I'll know better then what I want to tell her. They set the date for the turning 3 weeks hence, enough time for Helena to settle her human affairs and prepare mentally for the ordeal ahead. She quit her job at the gallery with a story about a family emergency, and she told her parents that she had been offered an amazing opportunity abroad. The lies tasted bitter, but she forced them out, building a foundation for her eventual disappearance. And through it all, Cassia watched. Helena saw her at court gatherings, always maintaining perfect politeness, but with eyes like chips of ice. Cassia never spoke against the king's decision openly, but Helena overheard whispers, caught the edges of conversations that cut off when she entered a room. The lady was still maneuvering, still working toward some goal Helena could not quite identify. 2 days before the turning was scheduled, Isolde came to see Helena. She appeared at Helena's apartment in the early evening, knocking politely and waiting to be invited in. Helena, surprised, opened the door to find the vampire girl standing in the hallway looking uncomfortable. "May I speak with you?" Isolde asked quietly. "It will not take long." Helena stepped aside, wary but curious. Isolde entered the small apartment and stood in the middle of the living room, looking around at the modest furnishings with an expression Helena could not quite read. "I wanted to apologize," Isolde said finally. "For my mother. For myself. I have admired King Draven for decades, and I allowed myself to believe that he might someday return my feelings. I see now that I was deluding myself. He looks at you the way I always hoped he would look at me, with absolute devotion. I am jealous, I confess, but I am not cruel. You make him happy. That should be enough." Helena felt her suspicion ease slightly. Thank you. I know this can't be easy for you." "It is not," Isolde admitted. "But I am 200 years old. I will survive a broken heart. My mother, however." She hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. "My mother has not accepted this. She believes that if you fail to survive the turning, or if you prove unsuitable as a vampire, the king will be available again. She is planning something. I do not know what, but I know her. She will not accept defeat quietly." "What should I do?" Helena asked. "Be vigilant," Isolde said. "Trust the king. Trust Serafina. They will protect you. But know that my mother is patient and clever, and she has been playing these games for centuries. Do not underestimate her." She left as quietly as she had arrived, and Helena was left standing alone in her apartment, feeling suddenly cold. She pulled out her phone and called Draven. He answered immediately. "Helena? Is everything all right?" "Isolde just came to see me," Helena said. "She warned me that Cassia is planning something, that she hasn't given up on getting rid of me." There was a long pause. "I will increase your security. I should have done so already. Cassia will not get near you, I promise." "I'm not scared," Helena said, though that was not entirely true. "Or I am, but I'm not going to let it stop me. We're doing this, Draven. In 2 days, I'm going to become a vampire, and then I'm going to marry you, and Cassia can choke on her own schemes." She heard Draven's soft laugh, warm with affection. "You are magnificent. Very well. We proceed as planned. But I am assigning guards to you until the turning is complete. Serafina and 2 others. They will remain with you at all times." Helena wanted to argue, but she could hear the concern in his voice. "Okay, if it makes you feel better." "It does. I love you, Helena." "Never doubt that." "I love you too," she said softly. "I'll see you soon." The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Helena packed up her apartment, putting most of her belongings in storage. She would not be able to return here once she was turned. Draven had offered her rooms in the court, beautiful chambers that connected to his own, and she would live there for the foreseeable future while she learned to navigate her new existence. Serafina and the other guards, 2 silent male vampires named Corvus and Theron, stayed close but unobtrusive. Helena felt their presence like a shield, protective and reassuring. On the evening before the turning, Draven came to her apartment for what would be the last time. They sat together on her small balcony, looking out over the city lights, and he held her hand in comfortable silence. "Are you frightened?" he asked finally. "Yes," Helena admitted, "but I'm also excited. I know that's probably strange, but I am. I feel like I'm about to become the person I was always meant to be." "You are already exactly who you are meant to be," Draven said. "The turning will change your body, your abilities, but not your soul. You will still be Helena, still brave and kind and impossible and wonderful. I fell in love with your humanity, and I suspect I will love your vampirism just as fiercely." Helena leaned her head against his shoulder. "Tell me what it will be like," After, when I wake up. Everything will be sharper, Draven said. Colors more vivid, sounds more clear. You will be stronger, faster. You will hear heartbeats from across a room and smell fear like perfume. The world will be more intense in every way, and you will hunger. The first days are the hardest. The bloodlust is overwhelming until you learn to control it. But I will teach you. I will help you through every moment. And then we get married. And then we get married, Draven agreed. On the balcony where you first refused me, Seraphina suggested it. She thought it would be poetic. Helena smiled. It is. I like that. Full circle. They stayed on the balcony until the sky began to lighten with approaching dawn, and then Draven reluctantly left, promising to see her that evening at the court for the turning ceremony. Helena watched him go and felt no regret, only anticipation. She spent the day in a strange calm, punctuated by moments of sharp nervousness. Seraphina helped her pack the last of her things and provided a bag of clothes suitable for her new life, all in the elegant, timeless style favored by the vampire court. Helena tried on a gown of deep crimson and barely recognized herself in the mirror. You look the part already, Seraphina observed. You have adapted well to our world, Miss Orlov, better than most humans who attempt it. The king chose wisely. Thank you, Helena said, for everything, for watching out for him, for accepting me. You make him happy, Seraphina said simply. That is enough. As evening approached, they made their way to the court of night for the final time as human and vampire. Helena wore the crimson gown, and Seraphina led her through the familiar corridors to a chamber Helena had not seen before, deep in the heart of the court. It was a round room with a high domed ceiling, lit by hundreds of candles that cast dancing shadows on the stone walls. In the center stood a raised platform with a bed draped in white silk. Draven waited beside it, and the assembled court filled the edges of the chamber, silent witnesses to the ceremony. Helena saw faces she recognized, vampires who had become familiar over the past months. She did not see Cassia or Isolde. They chose not to attend, Draven said quietly, as Helena joined him on the platform. It is probably for the best. Helena nodded, nerves suddenly fluttering in her stomach. I'm ready. Draven cupped her face in his hands, looking into her eyes with an intensity that stole her breath. This is your last chance to change your mind. Once we begin, I will not stop until it is done. You will die, Helena, and you will be reborn. There is no going back from this. I know, Helena said steadily. I want this. I want you. I want forever. Then lie down, my love, and know that I will be here when you wake. Helena stretched out on the white silk, and Draven knelt beside her. The candlelight caught in his pale hair, turned his skin to alabaster, and Helena thought distantly that she was about to become like him, beautiful and terrible and immortal. Close your eyes, Draven murmured. This will hurt, but it will be over soon. Helena closed her eyes. She felt his cool fingers brush her throat, finding her pulse. And then there was a sharp sting as his fangs pierced her skin and the world began to slip away. The pain was immense and distant at the same time, a roaring tide that pulled her under. She felt her blood draining away, felt her heart beginning to stutter and slow. Somewhere far above her she heard Draven's voice, steady and certain, telling her to hold on, to stay with him just a little longer. And then there was warmth on her lips, copper sweet and thick, and instinct took over. Helena drank, swallowing convulsively, and felt something foreign and powerful flood into her. Draven's blood, ancient and potent, rewriting her from the inside out. The pain exploded into something beyond description. Helena tried to scream, but no sound came out. Her body arched on the white silk, every nerve ending on fire, every cell tearing itself apart and reforming. She was dying. She was being born. She was caught between, and it was agony. Draven's hands found hers, holding tight, and his voice was in her ear. I have you. I have you. You are so strong, Helena. You are doing beautifully. Just hold on. Just a little longer. Time became meaningless. There was only pain and Draven's voice and the terrible certainty that she would not survive this. But she had promised. She had chosen this. So she held on with everything she had, clinging to consciousness by her fingernails. And then, finally, the pain began to recede. It faded to a dull roar, then to a throb, then to something almost bearable. Helena became aware of her body again, of the silk beneath her back, and Draven's hands still gripping hers. "Sleep now," he said softly. "The worst is over. Sleep and let your body complete the change. I will be here when you wake." Helena let go and fell into darkness. She woke to a world transformed. The first thing she noticed was the sound of heartbeats, dozens of them, pulsing in an irregular rhythm that should have been overwhelming but instead felt strangely musical. The second thing was the scent, rich and layered, showing her the history of the room, the people who had passed through it, the very age of the stone. Helena opened her eyes and the candlelight was almost painfully bright. She could see every flicker of flame, could track individual motes of dust floating through the air. And sitting beside her, exactly where he had promised to be, was Draeven. "Hello, my love," he said softly. "Welcome back." Helena sat up slowly, testing her new body. Everything felt stronger, more responsive, as if she had been operating at half capacity her entire life and had only now realized it. She looked down at her hands and saw that her skin had taken on a faint, luminous quality, pale but not quite as dramatically white as the born vampires. "How do you feel?" Draven asked. "Different," Helena said, and her voice sounded different too, clearer somehow. "Everything is so much. The sounds, the smells. How do you function like this all the time?" "You learn to filter," Draven said. "To focus on what matters and let the rest fade into background noise. It will take time, but you will adapt. You are already doing remarkably well." Helena became aware of a deep ache in her throat, a burning thirst that felt almost impossible to ignore. "I'm hungry." "I know. Come. We have prepared for this." He helped her to her feet, and Helena was momentarily dizzy with the rush of sensation. But she steadied quickly, and together they walked from the round chamber to a smaller adjoining room where Serafina waited with several containers of blood. "Medical grade," Serafina explained. "Clean and safe. You will need to feed frequently for the first weeks as your body adjusts. Eventually, you will be able to go longer between feedings." The first taste of blood was a revelation. It was nothing like she had imagined, nothing like the horror movies suggested. It was warmth and life and satisfaction, easing the burning in her throat and filling the hollow ache in her chest. Helena drank until the containers were empty and she felt steady again. "Better?" Draven asked. "Much," Helena said. "How long was I out?" 3 days, as expected. The court has been waiting. They are eager to meet their new princess." Helena took a breath, or the approximation of one. Vampires did not truly need to breathe, she realized with a start, but old habits persisted. "Okay, let's do this." They returned to the grand hall together, and this time when Helena walked through the great doors, it was as one of them. The assembled vampires rose as she entered, a gesture of respect that made her throat tighten with emotion. She saw faces turn toward her with expressions of welcome and approval. And there, standing at the back of the hall with Isolde at her side, was Cassia. Her ice-pale face was a mask of controlled fury. Draven led Helena to the dais and turned to address the court. "My people," he said, voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. "I present to you Helena Orlov, newly turned and soon to be my queen. She has chosen to join us, to stand beside me for eternity. I ask that you welcome her as one of our own." The court erupted in applause, genuine and enthusiastic, and Helena felt tears prickling at her eyes. She had been so afraid that they would reject her, that she would always be seen as an outsider. But the warmth in the hall was unmistakable. Cassia did not applaud. She stood rigid and silent, and when the noise had died down, she stepped forward. "Your Majesty," she said, voice carrying clearly, "if I may, there is a matter of law that must be addressed." Draven's expression went carefully neutral. "Speak, Lady Cassia." "The old laws state that any vampire who would marry the king must prove themselves worthy through trial," Cassia said. Combat, wisdom, or endurance. It is tradition, meant to ensure that the queen is strong enough to stand beside the throne. I invoke that law now. Let Helena Orlov prove herself worthy or step aside. A murmur ran through the court. Helena felt Draeven tense beside her. That law has not been invoked in 3 centuries, he said coldly, and it is meant for challenges between rivals of equal standing. Helena is newly turned. It would be unconscionable to demand she face trial now. Then let her face trial when she has had time to adjust, Cassia said smoothly. 1 month from now, that should be sufficient for her to gain control of her new abilities. If she succeeds, I will accept her as queen and offer no further objection. If she fails, she must withdraw her claim. Helena felt anger rising hot and sharp in her chest, and with it came a surge of power that made the candles flicker. Draeven's hand found hers, steadying. It is Helena's choice, he said quietly. I will not force her to accept this challenge. But Helena was already stepping forward. I accept, she said clearly. 1 month from now, what will the trial be? Cassia's smile was thin and sharp. A test of wisdom and restraint. You will be locked in a room with a human for 24 hours. If you can resist feeding on them for the full duration, you pass. If you give in to bloodlust and harm them, you fail. It is a fair test, one that demonstrates the control necessary for a queen who must interact with the human world. It was a trap. Helena could see that immediately. She had been a vampire for 3 days. The hunger was already a constant presence, demanding and insistent. Asking her to resist it for 24 hours in close proximity to a human was setting her up for failure. But she could also see the political genius of it. If she refused, she would look weak, afraid. If she accepted and failed, Cassia would have public proof that Helena was unfit to be queen. And if by some miracle she succeeded, Cassia would be forced to accept the marriage. Agreed, Helena said before Draeven could object. 1 month, I'll be ready. The court erupted into excited chatter, and Cassia swept away, looking satisfied. Draeven pulled Helena aside, his expression troubled. You should not have accepted, he said. Cassia has stacked the odds against you. A month is not enough time to develop the kind of control she is demanding. Then I'll have to learn fast, Helena said. I'm not going to let her win, Draeven. I'm not going to let her take this away from us. Over the following weeks, Helena threw herself into training with a determination that surprised even Draeven. She learned to hunt, to feed cleanly without killing. She learned to fight, sparring with Corvus and Theron until her new vampire strength felt like second nature. And most importantly, she learned control. Serafina became her primary teacher, drilling her relentlessly on meditation techniques and focus exercises. They would spend hours together in a training room while Serafina brought in human volunteers, paid generously for their time, and Helena would practice being in their presence without giving in to the hunger. It was brutal. Every instinct screamed at her to feed, to take what she needed from the warm living body so close at hand. But Helena gritted her teeth and endured, focusing on Draeven's face, on the future they would have together if she could just hold on. You are doing well, Serafina said after a particularly difficult session. Better than I expected, honestly. Most new vampires would have broken by now. I can't afford to break, Helena said, wiping blood sweat from her forehead. Too much is riding on this. As the month drew to a close, Helena felt as ready as she would ever be. The hunger was still there, would always be there, but she had learned to master it, to make it serve her rather than control her. The night before the trial, Draeven came to her chambers and held her close. You can still refuse this, he said quietly. We can leave. Build a life somewhere else, away from the court and the politics. I do not need to be king if it means losing you. You're not going to lose me, Helena said fiercely. And you're not going to give up your throne because of Cassia's schemes. I'm going to pass this trial and then we're going to get married exactly like we planned. You are so certain. I am, Helena said. Because I have something Cassia doesn't understand. I have you. And I would endure anything, face any trial, to keep you. Draeven kissed her then, deep and desperate, and Helena poured all her love and determination into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. "I believe in you," Draven said. "Never doubt that." The trial was held in a chamber deep within the court, a simple room with stone walls and no windows. The court gathered outside, and Cassia herself selected the human, a young man who looked nervous but determined. He had been paid handsomely, Helena knew, and promised protection. Cassia would not risk breaking the law by allowing actual harm to come to him, but she had chosen well. The young man was healthy and strong, his heartbeat loud and tempting. Helena felt her fangs descend involuntarily as he entered the room. 24 hours, Cassia said, her voice carrying from beyond the doorway. Beginning now. The door closed with a definitive thud, and Helena was alone with the human. He stood against the far wall, watching her warily. "So," he said after a moment, "this is awkward." Despite everything, Helena found herself smiling. "A little. What's your name?" "Marcus," he said. "I'm a grad student. The money for this is going to cover my tuition for the year, so, thanks for that." "You're very calm," Helena observed, trying to focus on his words rather than the rush of blood through his veins. "They explained everything," Marcus said. "Told me you're new and that this is a test. Told me that you're not going to hurt me and that even if you lose control, there are vampires right outside who will intervene before it goes too far. So I figured, might as well make some money and be part of something weird and interesting." Helena sat down on the floor, keeping distance between them. "You're braver than I would be in your position. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just practical." Marcus slid down to sit as well. "So what should we do for 24 hours? Want to play 20 questions?" They talked. It was the only way Helena could think to distract herself from the hunger, so she engaged Marcus in conversation and discovered he was funny and smart, studying medieval literature with plans to become a professor. He asked her about her life before turning, and she found herself telling him about the gallery, about her apartment, about Lydia. The hours crept past. The hunger grew worse, a burning ache that consumed her thoughts. But every time Helena felt herself starting to slip, she would focus on Marcus's words, on his humanity, on the fact that he was a person, not a food source. They talked about books and movies and the absurdity of vampire politics. Marcus told her about his family, his dreams, his fears, and somewhere in the small hours of the morning, Helena realized that she had made a friend. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus asked finally. "The trial, I mean. It seems like a lot to go through just to marry some guy." "He's not just some guy," Helena said. "He's everything. And I'm not doing this just to marry him. I'm doing it to prove that I belong here. That I can be what his people need. That choosing me wasn't a mistake." Marcus nodded slowly. "That makes sense. For what it's worth, you seem pretty in control to me. I mean, we've been stuck in here for like 18 hours and you haven't tried to eat me once. That's got to count for something." Helena laughed, the sound surprising her. "Thanks. I appreciate the vote of confidence." The final 6 hours were the hardest. Helena's control was fraying, worn thin by exhaustion and constant vigilance. The hunger had become a living thing, clawing at her insides, demanding satisfaction. Marcus had fallen asleep in the corner, trusting her to maintain control, and that trust was the only thing keeping her anchored. She focused on Draven, on his storm-gray eyes and quiet strength, on the future they would build together, on the life she had chosen. And slowly, agonizingly, the remaining hours ticked past. When the door finally opened, revealing Serafina and Cassia and the assembled court beyond, Helena was still sitting exactly where she had been, and Marcus was waking up stretching and yawning. 24 hours, Serafina announced. "The trial is complete. Helena Orlov has succeeded." The court erupted in cheers, and Helena saw Draven pushing through the crowd to reach her. She stood on shaky legs and walked into his arms, and he held her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I knew you could do it," he said against her hair. "I knew it." Cassia stood frozen in the doorway, her expression one of utter disbelief. Isolde touched her mother's arm gently, saying something too quiet for Helena to hear, and after a long moment Cassia stepped forward. "You have proven yourself," she said stiffly. "I acknowledge your worthiness to stand as queen. I will offer no further challenge." It was as close to an apology as Cassia was capable of, Helena suspected. She inclined her head, accepting the concession, and watched as the lady and her daughter withdrew. "It's over," Helena said wonderingly. "We can actually do this now. We can get married." "Not just married," Draven corrected. "Handfasted in the old way. A binding that will last for eternity." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready since the moment I came back," Helena said. "Let's do it now. Tonight. I don't want to wait another moment." The handfasting was prepared in hours, a testament to the efficiency of the vampire court. They gathered on the balcony of the grand hall, the same balcony that overlooked the underground gardens where Helena had first confessed her love. Draven had it decorated with thousands of night-blooming flowers, their scent perfuming the air. Helena wore a gown of white silk that seemed to glow in the lamplight, and Draven wore formal robes of deep midnight blue. The court assembled to witness, filling the balcony and spilling out into the gardens beyond. Seraphina performed the ceremony, speaking the old words in a language Helena was only beginning to learn, but she understood the meaning when Draven took her hands and spoke his vows. "I, Draeven Jokela, King of the Eastern Territories, take you, Helena Orlov, as my wife and queen. I bind my life to yours for eternity. I promise to cherish you, protect you, stand beside you in all things. My heart is yours, now and always." Helena's voice was steady as she replied, "I, Helena Orlov, take you, Draeven Jokela, as my husband and king. I bind my life to yours for eternity. I promise to love you, support you, walk beside you through whatever comes. My heart is yours, now and always." Seraphina bound their hands together with a silver cord, and the court cheered as Draven kissed his new wife with a tenderness that made Helena's heart ache. When they finally broke apart, both smiling, the celebrations began. There was music and dancing, and vampires who had lived for centuries came to offer their congratulations and welcome Helena as their queen. She accepted their greetings with grace, still marveling at the strangeness of it all. Late in the night, when the festivities had mellowed into quiet conversation, Helena found Isolde standing alone near the edge of the balcony. "Congratulations," Isolde said quietly. "You have earned this." "Thank you," Helena said. "And thank you for warning me about your mother. It helped me prepare." Isolde nodded. "She is not a bad person, my mother, but she is ambitious, and she allowed that ambition to blind her to what was right. I think she understands now. Seeing you pass the trial, seeing how determined you were, it forced her to accept that King Draven's choice was sound." "I hope we can all move forward from this," Helena said. "I don't want enemies in the court. I want to be a good queen." "You will be," Isolde said with quiet certainty. "You already are." She drifted away into the crowd, and Helena returned to Draven's side. He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Happy?" he asked softly. "Deliriously," Helena said. "Although I keep expecting to wake up and find out this was all a very elaborate dream." "If it is, then I am dreaming it with you," Draven said. "And I never want to wake." They stayed on the balcony long after the other guests had departed, watching the night flowers sway in the underground breeze. Helena thought about the path that had brought her here, from that first bewildering proposal to this moment of perfect contentment. It had been strange and terrifying and wonderful, and she would not change a single moment. "I have something for you," Draven said eventually, pulling a small box from his pocket. "I should have given it to you months ago, but the timing was never right." He opened the box to reveal a ring, delicate silver set with a stone that seemed to capture starlight. Helena held out her hand and let him slide it onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. "It belonged to my mother," Draven said. "She was mortal once, like you. My father turned her out of love, and they had 300 years together before she chose to walk into the sun. She was tired, ready to rest, and my father understood. Before she went, she told me to keep this ring for the woman I loved enough to offer eternity. I think she would have liked you very much." Helena felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I wish I could have met her." "So do I," Draven said. "But she left me with wisdom that has served me well. She told me that love is not about possession or control. It is about choice, freely given and freely accepted. You chose me, Helena. You chose this life. And that choice means more than anything I could have demanded or taken. I would choose you again, Helena said fiercely. Every time, in every life. Then we are both fortunate beyond measure, Draven said, and kissed her again under the light of the lamp flowers. The weeks that followed settled into a new rhythm. Helena took on the responsibilities of queenship with the same determination she had brought to the trial. She learned the intricacies of vampire law and politics, sat in on councils and negotiations, slowly earning the respect of even the most skeptical courtiers. She reached out to Lydia, inviting her friend to the court of night and explaining everything. Lydia's reaction was predictably enthusiastic. "This is the best thing that has ever happened to me," she declared, staring around the grand hall with wide eyes. "My best friend is a vampire queen, married to an actual vampire king. This is like every fantasy novel I've ever read, except real." "I was hoping you'd take it well," Helena said, relieved. "Are you kidding? Although I am a little hurt you didn't tell me sooner. I could have helped." "I know. I'm sorry. Everything moved so fast and I was still figuring it all out myself." Helena took her friend's hand. "But I want you to be part of this life if you're willing. Draven says you can be bonded to the court, which means you'll be under our protection. You can keep doing your research, keep living your life, but you'll know the truth, and you'll always be welcome here." Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "Yes. Absolutely yes. Although you have to let me document some of this. Not for publication, just for me. I need to write this down or I'm going to explode." They laughed together, and Helena felt a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying lift from her shoulders. She had been so afraid of losing everyone from her old life, but here was proof that some connections could survive even the strangest transformations. Cassia, true to her word, caused no further trouble. She remained a presence at court, influential and respected, but she no longer worked against Helena. On several occasions, she even offered advice on managing court politics, her centuries of experience proving invaluable. One evening, months after the hand-fasting, she approached Helena directly. "I owe you an apology," Cassia said without preamble. "I allowed my ambitions for my daughter to cloud my judgment. I see now that you are exactly what King Draven needed. You have brought him a happiness I have not seen in centuries, and you have proven yourself a capable and compassionate queen. I was wrong to oppose you." Helena was surprised by the admission, but she accepted it gracefully. "Thank you. That means a great deal." "I wonder if we might start again," Cassia said. "Not as rivals, but as allies. The court is stronger when its powerful families work together." "I would like that," Helena said honestly. They would never be close friends, but they forged a working relationship built on mutual respect, and that was enough. Helena learned that ruling was not about being loved by everyone, but about earning trust and making wise decisions, even when they were difficult. She discovered that she was good at it. Her human perspective, the empathy that Draven had fallen in love with, served her well in negotiations with the mortal world. She helped establish new protocols for vampire-human relations, creating systems that protected both populations, and slowly the Eastern territories flourished under their joint rule. A year after the hand-fasting, Helena and Draven stood together on the same balcony where they had been married, looking out over the night gardens. "Do you ever regret it?" Draven asked quietly. "Giving up your mortality, your human life?" Helena considered the question seriously. She thought about the things she had lost, the sunlight she could no longer enjoy without pain, the family she had left behind with careful lies. But then she thought about everything she had gained. Eternity with the man she loved, a purpose and a position where she could make real change. The friendship and respect of beings who had lived for centuries. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret any of it. This is where I'm meant to be, with you." Draven pulled her close, and they stood together in comfortable silence, watching the flowers bloom and fade in their endless cycle. Helena thought about the future stretching out before them, infinite and full of possibility. There would be challenges, certainly. There would be difficult days and political complications and moments of doubt, but they would face them together, king and queen, husband and wife, bound by choice and love and an eternity of tomorrows. "I love you," she said softly. "And I love you," Draven replied. "My brave, impossible Helena, my queen, my heart." They kissed under the lamplight, two immortals who had found in each other the rarest thing of all, a love worth an eternity. And in the court of night, deep beneath the mortal city, the vampires of the Eastern Territories celebrated the beginning of a new golden age, ruled by a king who had waited centuries for love and a queen who had been brave enough to choose forever. The story could have ended there, perfect and complete. But life, even immortal life, continues in ways both expected and surprising. 2 years after the hand-fasting, Helena discovered something that should have been impossible. She had been feeling strange for weeks, a persistent fatigue that made no sense for a vampire. Serafina had insisted she see the court physician, an ancient vampire named Dr. Aldrich, who had been practicing medicine for 4 centuries. His examination left him speechless, and then laughing with sheer astonishment. "Congratulations, Your Majesty," he said finally. "You are pregnant." Helena stared at him in shock. "That's not possible. Vampires can't have children." "Born vampires cannot," Dr. Aldrich corrected. "But there are legends, very old legends of turned vampires conceiving within the first few years of their transformation, when their bodies still retain some echo of mortality. It is extraordinarily rare. I have never seen it in my lifetime. But it is possible." Helena's hands went to her stomach, still flat but holding something miraculous. "I'm going to have a baby." "You and the king are going to have a baby," Dr. Aldrich confirmed. "Though I must warn you, the pregnancy will be unlike anything experienced by humans. Vampire gestation is much faster, and the child will likely be born with considerable power. You will need careful monitoring." Helena barely heard him. She was already planning how to tell Draven, imagining his reaction. When she finally found him in his study, poring over reports from the Western Territories, she could barely contain herself. "I have news," she said, closing the door behind her. Draven looked up, and whatever he saw in her face made him set down his papers immediately. "What is it?" "We're going to be parents," Helena said. "I'm pregnant. Dr. Aldrich says it's rare but possible, and we're going to have a baby." For a long moment, Draven simply stared at her. Then he was moving, crossing the room in a blur, and pulling her into his arms with a care that suggested she had suddenly become infinitely fragile. "A child," he breathed. "Our child. Helena, I never dared hope for this. I thought that was one sacrifice you would have to make, that we would never have a family." "Apparently the universe had other plans," Helena said, laughing through tears. "Are you happy?" "Happy does not begin to cover what I am feeling," Draven said. He knelt before her, pressing his forehead to her stomach with such tenderness that Helena felt her heart might burst. "Hello, little one. I am your father, and I already love you more than I thought possible." The pregnancy progressed rapidly, just as Dr. Aldrich had warned. Within 3 months, Helena was visibly showing, and within 6, she was ready to deliver. The court prepared with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, as no one living had experience with such a birth. When the time came, Helena labored for 12 hours before delivering a healthy baby girl with a shock of dark hair and eyes that already showed hints of storm gray. She wailed lustily, and the sound echoed through the court of night like music. "She's perfect," Helena said, exhausted and elated, cradling her daughter against her chest. "Absolutely perfect." Draven sat beside them on the bed, one finger gently held in the baby's tiny fist, and looked utterly overwhelmed. "We need a name." They had discussed it endlessly during the pregnancy, debating options and meanings. Now, looking at their daughter's face, Helena knew with sudden certainty. "Serafina," she said, "after the woman who helped us find each other. If she'll agree to the honor." "She will weep," Draven predicted, "but she will be honored beyond measure." They were right on both counts. When Serafina was brought in to meet her namesake, the normally stoic vampire's eyes filled with blood tears, and she held the baby with infinite gentleness. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for this gift. I will protect her always." Little Serafina grew quickly, displaying a hybrid vigor that combined the best of both human and vampire traits. By her first birthday, she was walking and talking, bright and curious and utterly fearless. The court doted on her, and even Cassia proved to be a surprisingly attentive honorary grandmother. When Serafina was 2, Helena found herself pregnant again. This time the court was prepared, and the delivery was smoother. They welcomed a second daughter, whom they named Guinevere, after Helena's maternal grandmother. She had Draven's pale hair and Helena's warm smile, and she was quieter than her sister, but just as determined. The 2 girls grew up in the court of night, learning to navigate both the human and vampire worlds. Helena and Draven taught them about their unique heritage, the responsibilities that came with their position, and the importance of using their power with wisdom and compassion. Years passed, and the family flourished. Helena proved to be not only a capable queen but a devoted mother, balancing her responsibilities to the court with her dedication to her children. Draven, who had spent centuries alone, discovered a capacity for joy he had not known he possessed. One evening, when Serafina was 10 and Guinevere was 8, the family gathered in their private chambers. The girls were sprawled on the floor drawing pictures of the night gardens, and Helena and Draven watched them with quiet contentment. "Do you ever think about that night at the gala?" Helena asked. "When you proposed and I turned you down?" Draven smiled, the expression soft and warm. "Often. I think about how close I came to never knowing this. If you had said yes immediately, out of fear or shock or simply not knowing better, it would not have been the same. We would not have had the journey that brought us here. You're saying I was right to reject you. I am saying that you gave us both something precious, the chance to choose each other freely, without coercion or pressure. And every day since has been a testament to the rightness of that choice." Helena leaned against his shoulder, watching their daughters laugh over some shared joke. "I ran back to you so fast once I knew the truth. I was terrified you wouldn't want me anymore." "Impossible," Draven said. "I wanted you from the first moment, and I will want you until the last star dies. You are my eternity, Helena." "And you are mine," she replied. Serafina looked up from her drawing. "Mama, Papa, are you being mushy again?" "Extremely mushy," Guinevere agreed, wrinkling her nose. Helena and Draven exchanged amused glances. "You will understand when you are older," Draven told his daughters. "That's what you always say," Serafina complained, but she was smiling. The evening continued in comfortable domesticity, a vampire family no different in the ways that mattered from any other. There were bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, and when the girls were finally asleep, Helena and Draven retreated to their balcony to watch the night flowers bloom. "Do you think they'll be happy?" Helena asked. "Our girls, growing up as they are, caught between 2 worlds. I think they will forge their own path," Draven said, "just as we did, and we will be here to guide them, to love them, to help them become whoever they choose to be." Helena nodded, satisfied with that answer. She thought about the impossible journey that had brought her here, from gallery assistant to vampire queen to mother. She thought about all the moments of fear and doubt, and all the moments of joy and triumph that had followed. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me that night. For asking, even though you knew I might say no. For giving me the choice. For loving me enough to let me find my own way back to you." Draven kissed her forehead gently. "Thank you for being brave enough to run back. For choosing this life, this world, me. For giving me a family I never dreamed I could have." They stood together on the balcony, king and queen, husband and wife, parents to 2 extraordinary daughters. The court of night hummed with life around them, and above, the mortal city went about its business, unaware of the hidden world beneath its streets. Helena thought about the future stretching out before them, infinite and full of possibility. There would be challenges still to come, she knew. Their daughters would grow and face their own trials, The political landscape would shift and change, but they would face it all together, bound by love and choice and the unbreakable commitment they had made to each other. She had rejected the Vampire King's proposal without knowing who he truly was. She had learned the truth and run back fast, terrified and hopeful and desperately in love. And now, years later, she stood beside him, not as someone who had been chosen, but as someone who had chosen in return. It was the difference that made all the difference. And it was the foundation upon which they had built a love that would last forever. In the night garden below, flowers bloomed and faded in their endless cycle, marking the passage of time in a place where time had lost most of its meaning. And in the private chambers above, two small girls dreamed of adventures yet to come, protected by parents who had faced down impossible odds for the chance to be together. The story of Helena and Draeven was far from over, but this chapter, the one that had begun with a rejected proposal and led to a love that transformed two worlds, had found its perfect ending. They had their forever, hard-won and precious, and they would spend every moment of eternity grateful for the chance to share it. Together. Always.